Welcome back to the Bunter's Yard eBay Rescue from Hell Part 4, and today we are adding weathering with oil paints, and these are what we're going to be using. So we're going to primarily using the oil brushes. These are already pre-mixed, quite thin. That one is just a plain black, we'll use that in a little while. And that one is white, and we don't use that at all. Well, I'll explain, I'll maybe explain that later on, what I had in mind for that. Selection of brushes, some to apply the washes, some to apply the paints, and some to move off. And then oil paint thinners, which is important to get the correct one, obviously. So on the first stage, we're going to add in what they call a pin wash. Now, a pin wash is a very thin mix of oil paint, and it will go in between all the cracks and crevices and around the decals of the body of the 08. And the reason for doing that is a couple of reasons. One is to add like that grounding grime effect around the edges of the hinges and the handles and so on. And secondly, because we're using a dark colour, it creates like a shadow in between the panels as well, which is one thing that is it identifies a model being a model. It's the kind of thing that your brain says this is a model because the shadows are incorrect. So this kind of adds a bit of a shadow detail to give it a little bit more of a lifelike appearance. Well, that's the plan anyway. So we've got our oil brush of dark brown paint in the middle. That's dark rust, I think that's called. And then we're going to have two wells of thinners, and one we're going to use for mixing, and the other one I'm going to keep clean so we can clean our brush. And we just need to mix this down. It's going to be really, really thin, really, really runny, and it's just a bit of trial and error. You'll once you try it a few times, it becomes obvious kind of what you're after, but you get the hang of it. Trial and error. Good thing with oil paints is you get it wrong, it comes straight off. You just use clean thinners, take the whole lot off, wait for it to dry, and then start again. So you need to load your brush up really quite well, and then as you dot it around, capillary action will drag it down the detail lines and the panel lines, and give that appearance of that sort of grime and the little shadow. But don't worry about all the mess, all the runs. That cleans off really, really easily in a little bit. So it's really, pretty unavoidable. It looks a bit hideous at the minute, I have to admit, but it will clean off nicely. Now we've used dark rust, which is just a dark brown for this particular effect. You can use any colour you want, depends on what you're modelling. You might want to use a rust colour or a sand colour. Typically we try to avoid using like a definite sort of pure black, because most things in life, most colours in life are not pure black anyway. So even on the railways, most things that you would perceive as being black are really probably like things like grease are going to be a very, really dark brown with lots of black mixed in, but it won't probably be a pure black. So we try to avoid using that, although a bit later on I will use some black for some oil stains. So we're just trying to add this into the places where the grease will build up as well, so we're going to enhance that in a little bit. If you get it wrong, put too much on, don't like the effect, then use a clean brush with some thinners on, and the whole thing will just come off. It takes a day or so to dry thoroughly, so there's no rush. If you come back in an hour's time and you don't like it, you can start all over again, or you can add more, whatever way you choose to go. So it's unlike, you know, using other paints like acrylics and enamels. You've got quite a bit of time to decide whether you like the effect or not. So just while we're watching, we finish this side of the body. Again, just want to thank everybody that's watched the first 3 parts of this mini-series. It's been great fun doing this, and I've enjoyed your comments. Thanks for all your participation, and obviously everyone that's subscribed, but more so is the people that watch these and then come back each time and give me a bit more encouragement to continue with this particular build. So we give that a little while to dry, but just to sort of demonstrate what you can do with a clean brush, which we just dipped in the thinners and then pretty much dried. We've wiped as much as we can off. We can then just go around and we just clean up a little bit some of the overspills. It's probably best to leave this a little while to dry properly, just for the sake of the video. I'm just showing it a bit sooner. This I've let to dry a little bit longer. You can see the main thing we want to get rid of are these tide marks. You know, the obvious sort of edge of the oil, and we can just do that just by thinning it with a brush, just by feathering off with a brush. We don't want to take it all off, just leave some on. Now in some places there might be these tide marks, so you may want to leave them for effect. Make sure you keep on cleaning your brush. Use a dirty brush, otherwise you'll start to introduce in more oils where you don't want it, where you try to take it off, you put more on. So just kind of keep it clean. I'm going to just clean off these areas where there's rivets and so on. Why the brush will work, obviously you'll still leave some of the oils around the rivets and some of the raised details, so they'll still be visible with the wash in it. So don't worry too much. Just go very, very gentle, and just clean up as much as you need to clean, basically. If you've not used oils before, really, it's worth getting some just to give it a go. They're inexpensive. You buy a cheap set from, you know, the pound shop or the range or wherever your shops are in your country, Walmart perhaps if you're in the States. You can buy a cheap artist set just to give you a start. You only need a couple of basic colours anyway. But the oil brushes are really nice to use, so I'd really suggest getting a set of those. They come in sets of 3s and 4s, I think, different rust tones and different sets, so have a look at those. Now I've been using oils for a while, and I have to admit they were in the toolbox for quite some time, and I didn't really get my head around them and use them. But once you've sussed it, they are extremely useful. And like I said, the best thing is if you don't like it, you just take it off and start again. So and you can, you know, just manipulate these for such a long time until you get them right. And even when the camera's turned off in a moment, I'll probably go and have a little sort of play and a clean up and move some more bits around. It's difficult to see from the angle that I'm doing with the camera, is to make sure this is exactly as it should be. So I will finesse this probably off camera in a little while anyway. So we'll let all that dry properly, and we're going to continue with the front and the back. So we're going to use this rust colour. It's kind of typical of what you see on the fronts and the backs of sort of any of these shunters, really. So around these, all the details, the rivets and the screws and the lamp hangers and the bars and etc. There's always this sort of brown grime that's everywhere basically, and even if the front of the loco gets a wash, or the back in this case gets a wash, there's always going to be that grime, which is going to be in the sort of difficult to get places. So that's all we're trying to sort of emulate here. It's just to drop in this this kind of rusty brown all over the place, just to give it that grimy, well used effect. And you can use different shades. Again, it depends on what you're modelling. You may want to use a darker colour, but typically it seems to be this sort of rusty brown. And we're going to leave this on there to dry a little bit longer than some of the other bits we've done, and we'll sort of clean it back in a little bit. Same on the front, just using it the same as a pin wash, exactly the same again, just dropping it in, and you can see capillary action and gravity sort of taking place, and it drags it all around, which is lovely. Don't worry again if there's too much, we're going to take some of this off anyway. That's the whole intention. So I'm just making sure I get into all the nooks and crannies with this. A bit later on, I did actually use a black on the grill as well, just to give that a bit of a grimy look, and you might catch a glimpse of that in a later clip. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that clip didn't actually come out on the camera. I think the battery went flat and it sort of corrupted the file, so I couldn't show you that bit, so apologies for that, but using it in the same way. So again, on the back and the front, all I want to do is get rid of these tide marks, so there's no sort of obvious line where the oils have been on and dried, and just using it with a cotton bud, just gently rubbing it back. Because we're using a cotton bud, we won't get into all the smaller areas, and we'll leave a portion of this this dirt still on the wagon. And you can see it catches around things like the rivets, and just gives that sort of not been cleaned for a few years look. Try and use downward strokes all the time, the way that rain would normally sort of wash everything away. There's more grime to go on this at a later stage. So obviously in the next video we're going to use acrylics, and we're going to add the sort of the final coats, and hopefully that will tie it all together. So our next stage is to add oil stains using oil paints, which is quite appropriate, and we are going to use straight from the tube black. So although, despite the fact I said don't tend to use black a lot, it would probably be appropriate for this particular little mark, I think. So we're going to mix it down, so it's a little bit in the well there. You can just see it straight out of the tube, and some thinners, and then we're going to mix it down so it's just a little bit more liquid. I don't have a black oil brusher, So definitely need to invest in one of those. They're not expensive, and I think I have the shopping list on Amazon in the morning. So we're just going to dab this in the kind of places where we get this build up of oil and grease and grime, and then we'll come back in a moment. We'll blend it in. And leave this to dry a little bit longer than I have. I'm just doing this for just to show you basically the kind of thing that you would do. The longer you leave it to dry, not within reason, the better. So I would probably leave it 10-15 minutes before you go any further. But it will still work anyway. So that's what we're going to do. Just sort of blend it in, so we get these sort of oil streaks and stains. You may want them to do a bit more pronounced on your model. I just kind of want an effect of a dirty patch here and there on a couple of places. So we're just going to drag that in, keep the brush nice and dry. I've not put any thinners on this because I didn't want to sort of wash it away too much. So this is just a dry brush. I'm just making sure I wipe this from time to time, just to get rid of some of the excess paint. Otherwise, again, we'll just be adding it on in places where we're trying to take it off, basically. So we're just going to blend it in, really light strokes. And you can see the effect building up there. And again, you can add more in. You take the whole lot off if you don't like it. So whatever you choose to do. So it's the great thing with oils. Apologies for the camera going out of focus there. Hopefully you can still see what we're doing. There we go. There seems to be this part of the Class 08 seems to get really grotty and grimy anyway, so we're going to be adding even more on that little sort of box area in front of the cab a little bit later on. You just need to blend it in nice and gentle. Keep your brush clean, free of as much paint as you can. Because the contrast between the oil streaks and the sort of the fresh paint underneath, it might be a bit the contrast might be a bit heavy at the moment, but once we get our weathering coats on our acrylics, some of the grime and stuff, it will hopefully tie everything together. And then we're going to add some rust. So checking back on our reference image, we can see there's sort of heavy rust around this kind of hinge. So we're going to kind of copy that to a degree. So we need to dab the oil brusher on. So this is not mixed down, this is straight from the oil brusher pot. And we just need a slight touch, just really a little bit here and there, wherever you think rust would start from. And you might find on your particular model, if you're modelling against a particular reference image, that the rust may be heavier in one place rather than another. This is just what I've chosen to do, and it's similar to the reference image we're modelling against. And then with a brush which has been dipped into thinners and then dried off as much as you can, just need to drag down, and that will give our rust streak. Now, like I say, for the video I've done this a little bit quicker than I normally would have. I would normally leave everything to dry in between different colours, definitely, but I haven't done that as much as I would normally for this, just for the sake of the video. So the effect on yours will maybe a little bit nicer than on mine, but you know, we're looking for a grotty and well used effect anyway, so I don't think it really matters too much with what we're doing here. So I need to blend these rusts in. Now this front part here is an exhaust, I guess. Normally really on a few I've seen are really rusty, so we're going to add lots more rust on that and a bit later on. So around the front on the buffer beams, they normally get chips and heavily sort of weathered, so I'm just going to add a few sort of little chip marks in there, and we're just going to leave those. We won't be blending those in. We want them to be a more sort of definite than, oops, drops it. And then on the back, same thing on the back as well, just around the bottom, and whether it's actually, you know, rust or paint chips or just chunks of grime, really, that's kind of the effect we're trying to simulate here. Again, if you don't like it, like that bit, which is totally wrong, we can use a damp oiled brush and we'll just clean the whole thing off and just let it dry for a moment. It will evaporate, and then you can continue weathering, painting over that. So that's pretty much it for this part 4. In the next part, like I said, we'll be using acrylics to do our rust and grime, and I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully this will tie it all together and it will look a little bit nicer.